Presenters and participants, welcome to Breakout Session 3, Poverty, Inequality, and Household Welfare as a part of the 8th Summit Annual Economics Conference 2025. We are delighted to have you join us today as we engage in insightful discussions. The session will be chaired by respected Dr. Asimzul Fikar Ali, who is the Research Director of Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies, and we have Dr. Azim Kari, who is the Senior Research Fellow at the Bangladesh Institute of Development Studies as the discussant for this session. Without further ado, I'll hand over the session to the chair.
Thank you. পুরো সময়টা কতটুকু সেশনের জন্য?
Sir, 1 hour and 30 minutes.
1 hour and 30 minutes. Thank you so much. And at the very outset, I would like to thank Sahem and the organizers to invite me to chair the session and designate discussing my colleague, Dr. Azim Karim, and the paper presenters and the rest who are here in this session. Welcome you all. In this session, we have 4 presentations to make by Dr. Sunil Khashia, Assistant Professor, VIT AP University, Indira Pradesh, India, and he will be making the presentation on can financial inclusion reduce poverty, in particular from Eastern rural India. The next presentation will be on modern day slavery and economic inequality, a complete study of tea workers in Bangladesh and cocoa workers in Ivory Coast. Sounds very interesting by Tasfiya Nishad. Tasfiya is he in? Not yet, sorry.
He's on the
Okay, sorry. She will be here in a moment. And then Sadia Afrin, Kashmir is student, Department of Anthropology, University of Dhaka, and Sadia Afrin and who will be making the joint presentation. Tasjin Tanha, graduate student, Department of Economics, Jahangirnagar University. Incidentally, I am also from Jahangirnagar, right? Okay. And they will be making the presentation on examining the impact of financial sector development on health outcomes in Bangladesh and ARBL time series approach. The final presentation will be made on remittances as a catalyst for poverty reduction in Nepal, insights from National Living Standards Survey by Pawan Singh, PhD student, and Dr. Kalanvi Pradhan, Assistant Professor, joint presentation once again, and he is at the Engineering Institute of Technology, Indore. Right, the entire session is on poverty, inequality, and household welfare. We'll be listening for presentations and then the discussion for him will be reflecting on either all the 4 presentations or she has the liberty to pick and choose. And then we'll have some time to have the full discussions, open discussions. So you have also an opportunity to reflect on the presentations and to say what you would like to say on the topic that will be presented. So with this, I'd like to go by the serial of the papers listed in the program. So first presentation on can financial education reduce poverty, empirical evidence from Eastern rural India by Dr. Sunil Khashia. Sorry, I'm sorry, Khosla. Sorry, Khosla. Right. Basically, how we can 15 minutes. minutes for the presenter. 10 minutes. Okay. 10 to 12 minutes. Okay. 10 to, do you have any timekeepers? Okay, very good. So, he will give notice. 5 minutes? 5 minutes? No. Sometimes. Okay. Okay. Fine. Thank you. Good time starts.
Okay, I have to use this. Okay, okay. So, so, select
Sorry,
proceed.
please.
Okay. Once again, a very good morning to all of you present here, respected chair, sir, discussion ma'am, all the dignitaries, and my dear colleagues. I welcome you all for this presentation. My name is Dr. Khosla, and the paper is also co-authored by my research scholar, Rajasri Patra. The title is Can Financial Inclusion Reduce Vulnerability to Poverty? Empirical Evidence from Eastern Rural India. So I'll directly begin with research backdrop where I'll highlight why this study is the need of our, how differently we have done, and what is the contribution of our study. And so, since all of us present here are working more or less related to poverty, inequality in such aspects, so if we look at the statistics, poverty is gradually decreasing. The extreme poverty, even just now we heard that it is gradually decreasing. But at the same time, if the poverty threshold level is increased to more than $2 or $3, then the poverty rate is increasing too high. Again, if you calculate in multidimensional poverty index, around 1.1 billion global people are in below the poverty line. And more of them, more than 80% people are living among the poverty people are living in Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. So the question that I want to ask here is, despite all the government taking a lot of initiatives, social protection policies, safety net, and like international organization helping in this aspect, why still poverty is the persistent? So is it because of lack of our policy fail or lack of financial support, or what are the issues? Okay, so as we have gone through the literature review, we observe that actually over a period of time, some households come out of poverty, but at the same time, many non-poor households fall into poverty. That is called vulnerable poverty. But at the same time, many non-poor households they fall into poverty because of various covariate and idiosyncratic seeks and lack of coping strategies. COVID-19 is the best example. Many people lost their job, many people lost their loved ones, like those who are only earner. Many people got various health crises, okay, like political instability, prices crisis. So people have rural population, if you consider, they have less coping capacity and they fall into poverty, but they are nowhere in the government scheme because they are not in the below poverty line. So how do we tackle them? That is where this concept called vulnerability to poverty is very important, and it is different from the traditional what to say scheme of measuring poverty because it helps understand in the future coming in next 1 2 3 or 5 year, we predict that who are the vulnerable households, what are the dominant risks they face, what are the coping strategy they are adopting, and even if government wants to target, who should they target, what type of policies they can design. So that's how it is important. So what is happening is most of the studies they are looking at only the current poverty scenario. So we predicted the future poverty that is called vulnerable poverty, and then as you could see in the slide, several things like social protection, etc., is working out here. But we looked into financial inclusion. So, what is financial inclusion? Basically, in rural areas, people like government support the financial services like banking, opening account, less credit facility, loan facilities, ATM serving, all sort of facilities are provided so that everybody can take part in the active economy. And we created an index to understand who are the financial included, and we looked whether those who are included are actually falling less into the poverty. And that is how it is important. If they don't fall into poverty and those who are coming out of poverty, so poverty can be eradicated. And that is where it has got the importance in sustainable development goal, but which was missing in millennium development goal. So we divided our paper into two parts. First part, we estimated the future poverty in eastern rural India, and second part, we examined impact assess of the impact of financial inclusion using the econometric approach, evaluation, impact evaluation approach called propensity score matching and endogenous switching regression. Coming to this study area, I packed it because we have to reduce the slides. So out here you could see the study area. Maybe you are not aware, but we collected a sample of 467 using the multi-stage sampling framework from Katak and Jagatsinghpur of the state of Odisha. Okay, so this area we have chosen because they are prone for vulnerable things like cyclone, flood, mostly affected. At the same time, these areas are also, according to government report, they are doing financially well. So we wanted to check whether this is working out there. So we have used some few econometric approach, basically vulnerability as expected poverty approach. Out here, detail is there, but I will not be able to go into detail because of time constraint, but the paper is already there and we can discuss if it is required. So basically, if you look at the equation one, it says that current status of poverty in the future, whether that will reduce below poverty line or not. So we use this approach devised by Chaudhary et al. And this approach is different from the other approach because that is just index, but this is the econometric approach which we follow, and we follow various steps to understand if the household's income or expenditure fall or they fall to poverty or not. And here also I packed it into approach that to measure financial included or not. In the paper we have given detail, but I made it comprehensive that three indicators or three dimensions we have used based on the Alker and Foster County approach that is called multidimensional approach, where we have assigned equal weight and we followed their strategy to estimate their household is vulnerable or not, financially included and not included. And the final method that we have used is propensity score matching as well as endogenous, but I am presenting here endogenous switching regression. So propensity score matching approach basically makes two groups based on their propensity score and using some of the method like nearest neighbor matching method and kernel and radius. We divided into two groups for the included and excluded, and the difference gives whether the scheme or like included households are less vulnerable or not. So endogenous switching regression is advanced. It controls the endogeneity which the propensity score matching may not control. And the specific things is out here you could see is two regimes are there. In regime one, basically it creates a counterfactual for those who included, and in the regime two, it creates a participant for those who have not participated itself, and then gives the difference, and that shows we go for the indicators, statistical significance, etc., and we see if that is reducing. So out here, just the result part is we have seen that 34% of household of this area is financially excluded despite the government efforts. So that shows that financial service reaching out to many people yet. And the vulnerable aspect here, as you could see, that is what the important, although we have found out many other reasons for to explain this. So we could see that on the right hand side, that is what very important thing that I want to emphasize here is, if you see only about let's say 30% as per the international poverty line of two, the $0.15 as per the current scenario, we have seen that 30% of households are living below the poverty line. But if you look at the vulnerable to poverty, which is about 43, which is high. So that is what it says. People are poverty, living in below poverty line, but there are many people they fall into poverty because of various covariant and idiosyncratic shocks. So that is what we wanted to emphasize, and we can give a lot of other explanation there also. So this is the final results. So it says that, as you could see here, average treatment on the treated based on the ESR results I'm presenting here, it is negatively insignificant. So for those who are financially included, they are less vulnerable to poverty. So that shows that yes, if they are participating or they are financially included, so it is reducing the future poverty. So that's how it can be eradicated. So coming to the concluding remarks, so the findings shows that 66% of households are financially included, and 34 are not included, and vulnerable households are more than the currently living below poverty line households. And we have seen that vulnerable households that have financially included status are less vulnerable to poverty compared to their counterfactual. And we suggest some policy implication for government that working to eradicate poverty. That the findings suggest that government should prioritize the development and promotion of wide range of financial services and products, along with the training to assess the this because rural areas we still find is also required. In this context, financial inclusion can be integrated into school curriculum from primary to higher education. So with this, I would like to conclude, and I'm open for the discussion if it is happening, and then also if somebody is working in poverty in Bangladesh, I'll be happy to collaborate. So thank you so much, Sane. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for doing us, Pushpa. Then you can write, okay. Otherwise, we won't be able to manage time either. Okay. Right. Thank you so much. And now, Kaspian here is also with us, and I would like to request Siddharth to make the presentation on modern day slavery and economic inequality, a comparative study for tea workers in Bangladesh and cocoa workers in Ivory Coast. Kaspian? Yes, probably better. So we have 10 minutes to make the presentation. And there is a timekeeper here who will actually let you know 5 minutes and 1 minute time.
This is not the file, right? It 21 slides. Which one? This one? This one? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tashmi Nishat. I'm a student of Dhaka University studying anthropology. And my paper is Modern Day Slavery and Economic Aid Workers in uh, uh, Cocoa Workers in Ivory Coast. So I would like to start my presentation by asking a question, that is, how many times have the production? The answer is probably far more often than we would like to think, and that's because while tea and chocolates are considered to be benign commodities, the matter of the fact is there's
I believe this was your না স্যার জুমের কানেক্ট থাকে তো স্যার ওটা একটু বের হয়ে গিয়েছিল আর কি স্যার দিস ইজ ইউর প্রেজেন্টেশন রাইট এটা মিনিমাইজ করে গেছে ওকে আচ্ছা 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 এটা আচ্ছা আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে ডোন্ট ক্লোজ ইট ওকে
Good morning. I'm Sadia Afrin, student of Jahangirnagar University. I will be presenting our paper examining the impact of financial sector development on health outcomes in Bangladesh, an ARDL time series approach. This paper is co-authored by Tajdin Tanha, who is also a student of Jahangirnagar University. By financial sector development, we refer to the process of improvement of financial sector of a country which involves strengthening, deepening, and expansion of the financial institutions, markets, and infrastructure to provide better financial services to government, businesses, and households. Now, I'd like to share with you how financial sector development can have an impact on health outcomes. Financial sector development leads to economic growth, which in turn influences health outcomes. This helps to form a better life and facilitates health insurance, which are related to health outcomes. Financial sector development boosts government policies and improves public health programs. Now, we have found several literatures which found that financial sector development does have a significant positive impact on health outcomes. Here, some of the papers found insignificant or negative impact on health outcomes. Note that in most of the papers, the variable they used as a health outcome is life expectancy, and some papers used infant mortality rates as the variable of health outcomes. So, we have found that only a few papers included healthy life expectancy as a variable of their studies. So, we have focused on healthy life expectancy in this paper. Healthy life expectancy focuses on both qualitative and quantitative approach. It focuses on years lived without disability, diseases, and morbidity. And in our analysis, our key independent variable is Financial Development Index, which was constructed by World Economic Forum in 2008 and modified by International Monetary Fund later. Besides Financial Development Index, we included Globalization Index, Urbanization, and Education in our multivariate time series analysis. As for estimation method, we incorporated augmented decapolar unit root test to find whether our variables are stationary or not. As for co-integration test, we did the autoregressive distributed lag bounds test to find whether our variables are co-integrated in the long run or not. And our regression was Airedale error correction model. For diagnostic test, we did the Jarkberg test for normality, Bruce-Gottfried LM test for serial correlation, Bruce-Pagan-Gottfried test for heteroscedasticity, Ramsey-Reset test for model specification, cumulative sum and cumulative sum square test for structural stability. Now let's move on to our result and discussion part. This table shows that whether our variables are stationary or not. As the table shows that the healthy life expectancy and urbanization are stationary at the level 1, but the other variables are not. However, the other variables such as real GDP per capita, financial development index, globalization, and education are stationary at their first difference form. So we found an admixture of I0 and I1 variables. So we can proceed for the ARDL approach. Secondly, we did the co-integration test through ARDL bounds test approach. Here we can find that our F statistic was 8.14 and the I1 value at 1% significance level was 6.37. That is, our F statistic value exceeds the I1 value at the 1% significance level, so that we can conclude that our variables are co-integrated in the long run. So, this table shows the long run result of our finding. We can see that All the variables are significant at 1% significance level except education. And our key variable, which is financial development index, has a significant positive impact on healthy life expectancy, which that is 1% increase in financial development increases the healthy life expectancy by 0.045%. Note that real GDP per capita and globalization has a significant negative impact on healthy life expectancy as per our finding. This table shows the short-term result. Here we can see that the variables such as the real GDP, globalization, and urbanization have a significant impact on healthy life expectancy in the short run. But financial development and education do not have any significant impact on healthy life expectancy in the short run. Besides, the co-integration equation is also significant in this case, which shows that the deviation in short run from the long run equilibrium is corrected by 76.55% in each inch path each year, and the overall R squared value is 0.9181. After that, we did the diagnostic test. At first, Jarber normality test we did. Here, the probability value is so high and the Jarber value is very low that we can conclude that our residues are normally approximately normally distributed. And the table on the right hand side shows that in the decision column we can see that there is no such problem such as serial autocorrelation, heteroscedasticity, or specification biasness. After that, we did the cumulative sum and cumulative sum of squares, and we can see that here our variables are stable in both short and long run at 5% significance level, as the regression line is within the confidence band. After that, according to our finding, we would like to conclude our study. Here, we found a significant positive impact of financial development on healthy life expectancy or health outcome. But we have to keep in mind that financial the values for Bangladesh over years remain below 0.3 as a value of financial development index, which is considered as a poor value. So in our country, financial development should have more attention, and we found that economic growth has a negative impact on healthy health outcomes. Although we have found that economic growth does have a significant positive impact on life expectancy, but it shows that it has a negative impact in this case. So we need to change our economic growth so that we can reduce the pollution and focus on green industry. After that, globalization also has a negative impact on health outcomes in Bangladesh. So we should also focus on this to reduce the negative consequences. Urbanization has strong positive impact in this case. So we need to give more importance on planned urbanization to ensure better healthcare facilities more. And lastly, education does not have any significant impact on healthy life expectancy. Again, note that education does have a significant impact on life expectancy in Bangladesh, as per other studies suggest. So we need to emphasize on quality education to have to spread the knowledge regarding health, like public health awareness and health literacy. So these are the recommendations from our studies, and with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Talia, for your presentation. Now, I'd like to request Pawan Singh, PhD student, and Dr. Kalambi Pradhan, Indian Institute of Technology, Indore. So probably Pawan will make the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. This is your presentation. Remittances as a catalyst for poverty reduction in Nepal. Insights from National Living Center Survey. You Prime Minister now, please.
I'm Pawan Singh. I'm from Nepal. I'm currently pursuing my PhD at IIT Indore in India. So today's my topics for presentation is remittances as a catalyst for poverty reduction in Nepal. the insights from National Living Standard Survey of Nepal, round 4. Before I begin with this presentation, I'd like to give brief about what is remittances and its significance. Remittances is a transfer of money, transfer of money and goods that's sent by the workers abroad to the home country. And according to the NELM theory by Stark and Bloom, 1985, it suggests that remittances is not only migration is not only the individual strategy, but it's a household strategy that mitigates risk and diversify the income. And remittances is seen not only that boosts the consumption of the household, but it also helps to in long-term investment in education and health sector. Therefore, it is very vital in improving the poverty reductions of the different, least developed countries like Nepal. So before I begin with the research questions and objective, I would like to highlight on the research gaps, which I have, the studies from Worley 2012 and Loxin and others 2017, Thapa and Acharya 2024. They previously, these previous studies rely on the older version of Nepal Living Standard Survey, round 1, round 2, round 3, and which fails to capture the recent socioeconomic changes, such as when the Nepal entered into the federal system after 2050. And also the previous studies largely focused into the head count ratio and ignores the depth and severity of poverty. And so therefore we incorporate the different poverty metrics based on Foster, Greer, and Thorbeck 1984, including food and non-food poverty, which uses the latest Nepal Living Standard Survey, round 4, to capture the recent socioeconomic changes. So, so you can see at the global remittances, the presence of Nepal in terms of remittances to the GDP ratio is very high, which holds 6 positions at the proportion of remittances to GDP, which is which highlights the role of remittances in well-being, in poverty reduction and well-being, and it can be very important sources for a country like Nepal to help in poverty reduction, financial inclusion, and so on. So in this case, then in these studies, I have only dealt with poverty reduction. So my research question for the main research question is, how do remittances affect poverty reduction in Nepal? So my objective is to examine the impact of remittances on poverty using the Nepal Living Standard Survey round 4. And also I would like to explore the role of remittances in food and non-food poverty outcomes. So for this, the empirical strategy I have used is OLS, ordinary list squares, and poverty probit models, which is used for the baseline estimates to examine the role of remittances and poverty measures. So in order to account for the indigeneity concern related to remittance receipt, my first stage regression is as shown here. In where you can see JEDI includes the instrument variables, which is non-agricultural land and internet access. In second stage, you can see R hat, which comes from the estimates from first stage regression. So where XI represents the control variables, financial inclusion index, employment status, household age, household head age, household head gender, and household head education region, etc. I have also used propensity score matching in this model in order to reduce the selection bias related to the remittances received treatment category. So the data variable and sources which I have used is Nepal Living Standard Survey from 2022-23, and the household sample size is 9,600 households surveyed across 15 analytical domains. And I have also constructed a financial inclusion index using principal component analysis, where we have taken indicators as number of days taken to obtain loans as a proxy for quality of financial services, and the percentage of household using loans from formal institution to represent uses, and proximity to banks or financial inclusions institutions in kilometers as an access measure, and the percentage of people holding banks account in formal institutions to capture overall inclusion. So, we have also estimated poverty based on Porter, Greer, and Thorowek in 1984, where we have estimated how head count ratio, poverty gap, and squad poverty gap, which measures the prevalence, depth, and severity of poverty. So, talking about the results and discussion sections were our major findings regarding the impact of remittances on household poverty, where we find that remittances significantly reduce poverty across all the measures, across all the models, profit, instrumental variable profit model, and OLS models. This impact becomes even stronger when we introduce instrumental variable profit model, confirming that the remittances elevate both incidence severity of poverty when accounting for indigeneity. In addition, financial inclusion is also helpful in lowering the poverty, and female-headed households experience lower poverty compared to male-headed households. Education of household head is also important to reduce poverty measures, like which reinforces the role of human capital in economic well-being. Also, the household size is also very important, as the larger household face higher risk of poverty. And in terms of provinces, the Kosi, Madhya, and Gandaki province of Nepal has shown the significant reduction in poverty with the help of remittances. Particularly, you can see the strongest poverty reduction effect is in the state called Madhya. Similar to this, I have also analyzed the impact of remittances on food poverty and non-food poverty, where we can see that the household receiving remittances are less likely to experience food poverty. And if we introduce the instrumental variable models, which the magnitude of reduction in poverty is even higher, which shows the effect of controlling the indigeneity trends. And regarding the impacts of remittances on non-food poverty, we can see that the remittances even help in reducing the non-food poverty. And the other control variable, like financial inclusion, education role of the household head, age of the household head, where middle age head uh, tends to have fare better into the reduction in poverty. Household size also plays a greater role. If the household size is greater, then the poverty levels are less likely to reduce. And also, regarding the provincial differences, regions like Madhesh show significant reduction in both types of poverty, while other varies. And apart from the two SLS, I have also used the PSM model for propensity score matching, where the results from this ATT shows impact of remittances on household using the neighborhood, nearest neighborhood and kernel matching estimators, where it shows that you can see that the unmatched in the unmatched sample, you can see the difference between treated and control is 4.4% point, where after the matching is done through propensity score matching, you can see the difference is 8% point. So we can see that remittances has helped in reducing the poverty after matching. And also you can see similar to the nearest neighborhood approach, we can also see the kernel estimator method, where ATT has also using the after matching method, you can see that remittances has significantly helped in reducing the poverty by 4.5%. Okay, okay. Okay, so in discussions, remittances has significantly helped in reducing the poverty across all dimensions of poverty, be it food poverty, non-food poverty, and which demonstrate that remittances inflows can profoundly impact household welfare in even in the low-income settings with limited and social safety nets. This study is consistent with the previous studies, Adams, Kusricha to 2010 and Loxin and others 2010. And they also support the conclusion that remittances help in lowering poverty by directly increasing the household income, which can be allocated immediately towards basic needs and essential goods. Furthermore, the results of this study also highlights that effects of remittances on food and non-food reinforce the positive impact of remittances income on both consumption and non-consumption needs. This is consistent with the findings similar with the studies in Pakistan, Amjad et al. 2012, and Bangladesh, Mendola and Kaleto 2009, which showed remittances improve food security and enable households to invest in essential non-food items such as education and health. Thank you. You have any questions?
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. In fact, I would like to actually congratulate all the four presenters to make excellent presentations on their respective topics, and all the issues that they picked up is very important. Basically, to understand poverty, to understand equality, and how to actually address poverty and equality in respective countries, in Bangladesh and India, Nepal, and elsewhere. These are very important issues. Thank you so much for picking up the issues and also for making such a great effort and make the presentations in this great session. Thank you so much once again. Now, I'd like to request our designated discussant, Dr. Azrin Karim, to make her observations on which way she would like to proceed. Azrin, your time starts now, 10 minutes, 10, 12 minutes.
3 minutes.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay. So, good morning and assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Honorable Chair, to give me the floor. I think my role as a discussant is probably to highlight some of the strength and the weaknesses of each of these papers. So I'll go one by one, the way it has been presented, and probably just highlight a couple of points which I thought might be useful for the presenters and the authors. So the first paper we had in terms of presentation is titled, "Can Financial Inclusion Reduce Vulnerability to Poverty? Empirical Evidence from Eastern Rural India" by Dr. Sunil Khosla. In that paper, I think the paper is very interesting, and obviously there is a valid reason to connect financial inclusion with vulnerability to poverty. The way you understand poverty, the difference between poverty and vulnerability to poverty is poverty is more or less the state of being poor, right? And vulnerability to poverty is the probability of becoming poor, right? So the concept of future poverty. So perhaps it's very important if we want to look at the impact on vulnerability to poverty is to what extent the coping mechanism is working, right? So if the standard coping mechanisms doesn't seem to work, then in that case, there's a high likelihood that any person who is already not poor can put him or herself into becoming poor, right? And in this particular paper, it has been highlighted that 66% of the targeted households are having like financially included, and there is a definition for financial inclusion, that is access to financial services. So I think that's a valid reason to get into this relationship. And the good thing is they have found an impact, which is 42.6% on vulnerability to poverty. But having said that, I think when I went through the paper, sometimes I found it very difficult to connect to each of these segments because there's a lot of things went on. Say, for example, the determinants of financial inclusion, the determinants of consumption, smoothing, so and so. But the point is, when you have got various segments, even if you have a flow chart, I think it's very important that you get to the connections very clear. And sometimes you don't need so many factors to play because that can make the reader a bit confused. So which one is more prominent in terms of having this impact? So when you go for publication, definitely I believe you will opt for that. I think it's better that you shorten down or you have at least just put one section which merges both of these components and show the exact connection between financial inclusion and vulnerability to poverty. That will make the life of the reviewer much easier to understand, and even like the flow chart. And another question is in terms of policy, I think it's very important that you make a valid reason that why financial inclusion is more prominent than conventional social protection policies in reducing a vulnerability to poverty. Because when we think about reducing poverty, we think of the standard social protection programs or policies, right? So why we would consider financial inclusion, because this is a very survey data and they had a 66% inclusion of the households, but on a broader scale that might not be the case, right? So there are the issues, but I think this is a good thing because you are actually opting for something new which can work, which seems to work to reduce vulnerability to poverty, but you make a valid rationality to why this could be a good alternative to the conventional social protection policies. Okay, so let me move on to the second paper. The second paper is titled Modern Day Slavery and Economic Inequality, a comparative study of tea workers in Bangladesh and cocoa workers in Ivory Coast by Tashfia Nishat, right? So Ivory Coast, I think that's a place in West Africa, right? Cote d'Ivoire. Okay. When I actually reading the paper, I was actually very interested in terms of understanding the thematic comparison. Because recently I was writing a paper based on thematic approach. That's why, everything went quite well when I was reading that paper. But there's a lot of scope to improve the paper. That's where I want to emphasize. But first of all, I'd like to congratulate you. It's a very interesting thing and very important thing to highlight. Let me just, point out to a scenario which I faced very recently. I was reading a newspaper article very recently on the condition of Bangladeshi tea workers. And in one of the reports, they have highlighted that most of the employers of tea plantation, tea states in this country have a have a lavish lifestyle, right? So why, for me, the first question is when the employer are having such a lavish lifestyle, why their workers are having, such a devastating lifestyle, which has been highlighted in the newspaper, and that hurts. That should hurt everybody. So the point of inequality is there. That is my point. There's no question that there's a high level of inequality existing in the among the tea workers in Bangladesh. I don't know too much about the Ivory Coast. Probably literature can tell me that story, but that's what the case for Bangladesh. But that was a very important and a valid, case study to explore. Now the question is, when it comes to a study, and you go for comparing two different cases out of the same scenario, which you focus as labor exploitation. It's a very, very strong term when you use the word labor exploitation, right? So working condition is one thing, exploitation is another thing. So to what extent, what is happening in the existing working condition which can make an exploitative scenario for the laborers in a particular sector or industry that must be carefully observed and then pull it up. That was my point. And another thing is when you will use these terms, and I think it's very important that you go for shorten down the broad scenario. So, for example, you're talking about the rights, you're talking about the working conditions. Don't pull like 8 or 9 scenario, which can make it complicated. Because for me, you said there are two different countries in two different parts of the world, right? And we don't know too much about the similarity of the supply chains. We don't know too much about the entry point of the workers or the type of workers that operate in two different sectors, right? Say, for example, the minimum, even if there is no minimum wage. I'll rather say that because this is just, what they offer to them. But there has to be a minimum age as well, right? If you talk about the child labor. So we don't know too much about what is the condition of the cocoa industry in Ivory Coast in terms of like minimum age or minimum wage or, the gender dimensions and exactly what kind of things goes on in the production side or what kind of value actually is happening inside the supply chain. So entirely there's a different thing happening in this two case study, and I think if you shorten down your focus or the themes, that will work much better for you as a paper. And I think in the paper you're also missing a good literature review which you should pull down, and probably that will definitely boost up your paper as a writer. So let me proceed on to the third paper. The title of the third paper was Examining the Impact of Financial Sector Development on Health Outcomes in Bangladesh, an ARDL time series approach by Sadia Frame. In this paper, I'll first like to congratulate both the authors for having a very good introduction. Because I think in very rare cases, I find it difficult in a paper, especially a student paper, where they can start straightforwardly talking about where they should point out, right? Even if there is a lot of work to do, but I loved the way they started the paper. There's a very interesting thing happened in this paper. First of all, they differentiated why they have pointed out to health outcomes. In particularly, they have said they have selected healthy life expectancy. There's a new term compared to the standard life expectancy that we understand, right? But I think when I went towards moving on towards reading the paper in details, uh, as an author, probably you are going to develop more and work more on the paper. I think you should better explain the way you have actually developed your data set, right? Because there's a lot of indexes out there, and exactly how you actually pulled up all these data sets from different sources and how you make it happen to work as a single data set. If you give a good explanation, just a one paragraph, that will do a good job, right? So that's one observation. Another thing is just that's probably the last point here. I was thinking about your looking at the impact, comparative way of looking at the impact of financial sector development in comparison with the globalization index, right? And there's not too much in it, but I think you should put up some good lit review in it in terms of why you are talking about this, like going for a trade-off. And having said that, in your model, perhaps if you can do, you can add another variable on carbon emissions, right? Because you're talking about healthy life expectancy. So my point is, yeah, even if financial sector development seems to improve life expectancy, but carbon emissions can deteriorate. So, and you can add some interaction terms and see what is happening. Say, for example, with healthy, some of the variables globalization impact interact with carbon emissions of financial sector. See what happens when you do that, right? That can give you some new idea. So thank you for that. And let me move toward the final paper now, which is paper 4. The title of the paper 4 was Remittances as a Catalyst for Poverty Reduction in Nepal, Insights from National Living Standards Survey 4, which is the NLSS4 by Pawan Singh, who is a PhD student and assistant professor, right? IIT Indore.
So that's my guy.
Okay. Okay. You are the student, and that person was your supervisor. Okay. So sorry for that. This is a standard paper, right? I mean, we have heard about so many things linking, having linkage between remittances and poverty reduction, right? All over the world. But the first question, you are a PhD student, you should have a very good lit review, right? So the lit review was not, I don't think that's adequate, the first observation. And obviously, you are probably this is work in progress, and I hope you're going to improve. Because the reason I'm saying, obviously, you need to publish the paper, and there's a lot of paper which actually had looked at the impact of remittances on poverty reduction, especially even on Bangladesh as well. Right? There's a lot of paper, and so one of my observation is, I think you went for a model which is a binary model, right? And say, for example, differentiating the households who are like poor and who are non-poor, stuff like that. But I think you can also go for, because your model is there, your data is there. You can also look for a comparison between the households who have actually received remittances compared to the households who haven't received remittances. You did, but I think you probably haven't talked about the impact, of the households who haven't received remittances. See, so the point I'm trying to make, there's a 1-0, right? There's a binary, but if you go for a control group, say a treatment and control group, and add it, you can just check, or maybe as an appendix. Your entire conclusion is your impact on remittances on poverty reduction. But what is happening, because you're also talking about the regional implication. So, what is happening to the households who haven't received the remittances, right? Because for the regional thing, I think there is a point of regional implications in Nepal. And especially when you talk about regional implications and talk about remittances, there's always a question comes to the reviewer that why those particular regions has been selected. Is there any reason? Say, for example, for Bangladesh, some of the regions have got more probability of sending people abroad, right? Because they have got a history. But having said that, maybe they have also a history of poverty. And we don't know because you don't have too much on the literature. That's what I'm saying, right? So if you go for, and this will actually help your paper to boost up and go for a very good publication. Because overall, we know so many things about this picture, but in terms of regional implication, the idea is not very clear, both from the demand side and the supply side. That's what I'm saying, right? So you can add that. That was my observation, right? And yeah, well, that's all for me. And I have after discussing like all of these 4 papers, I would like to thank Sanem for giving me the opportunity to participate as a discussant in this important session on poverty, inequality, and household welfare. And thanks to the chair as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Azim Karim. Very comprehensive reflection on each of the papers, all the 4 papers. Usual Azim thinkings. Right. Now, we can have some time for open discussion. So floor is open, so you can raise your hand, identify yourself, and then ask your question. But I would like to request you to very pinpoint your comments or queries and don't to repeat queries asked by another commentator for another discussion. Thank you, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Let me introduce myself. I'm Zuhair bin Huda from University of Dhaka, the Economics Department, third year. I have a question for Nishad Apu. Um, so, you mentioned about the exploitation and some companies also you I saw there. So there are some companies in the tea industry that label themselves as ethical companies, or not. Yeah, they are organic also, but they are labeled themselves as ethical. So if they are ethical companies, then there must be some unethical companies too. So have you, in your research, looked into the ethical companies and how have they fared in comparison with those that don't label themselves as such, in the context of labor exploitation, definitely? And a second question is, maybe last year or a year back, there were some protests on behalf of the tea workers to raise their minimum wage. So they were demanding almost like 300 taka, but the government took it to almost like 170, I guess. So even if it is 300, I think that is also very low, even if it gets to 300. So is there a lack of awareness in terms of the workers? Like, do they really know how much value they are creating or how much they are benefiting the industry owners? So like their demand in itself is also quite low, I think. So have you come across these things in your research? My question.
Next, are you bolbe? Yes, very good. Sure, yes. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Dr. Steffi from Madras School of Economics, Chennai, India. I mean, it's just a clarification. So you've done a wonderful socio-economic, what do you say, graph of the place, your study, case studies, and also given a number of recommendations. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I missed out on something, but I was not getting that pinpointed recommendation. There was a list of recommendations. So I think it gets a little complicated when you have like 10 recommendations. So if there is like one important one or a group of important ones, what would that be? Like, what do you think should be the ideal case? Because we can ask for 10 things, but if you have to, prioritize one or two. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. I think it is not good to ask all the questions for one but I will come to others as well.
Sure.
I'm Sri Ranjit from Sri Lanka. In fact, similar situation we have in Sri Lanka where in tea plantation, so the workers are having a very low wages. But when we study the history of the Sri Lankan situation, there were local poor people actually in the labor market, but they were reluctant to join the plantation because they did not work under the colonial government. Therefore, they found that Tamil Nadu, there are a lot of cheap labor, and then they migrated to Sri Lanka. The insights of this problem, you can see even in other countries as well. But in this particular research, I'd like to know, you said that wages are low. That is true. But from economics point of view, then what is the productivity? Is there a gap between the wages that the laborers are receiving and what do they contribute to the industry? So if there's a difference, then of course we can justify there's an exploitation. Otherwise, if the workers are unproductive, I think we can justify the wages that they are currently receiving. That's it.
Yes, there is hand there. Okay.
Good morning. I'm Sherwa Tahir. I'm from Jahangarnagar University Economics Department. My question is for Sadia Apu. In your paper, you've introduced a term called healthy life expectancy, as Azrul ma'am have already mentioned. But my question is a rather short one: is have you considered mental health in your definition of healthy life expectancy or not? That will be all.
Anyone else? Okay, good. Probably. Okay, probably you people has drawn more attention or attraction. All the other papers had numbers, regressions,
Yeah, it's not
equations.
cartoons, probably that's
Yeah,
why.
okay, okay. Right. So we are almost there. Time wise, as it here, I have to say, I won't take much time. Just few words. So yes, I mean because that's right. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
1 minute, 1 minute and a half
Okay.
minutes.
Thank you so much for all the questions. So to answer the first question, I think your question was, are there any ethical corporations and how are they different from the unethical corporations? Well, if you visit the websites of all the leading companies, Kazi and Kazi, Mirzapur, they would give you a very glorious picture of what they're doing to the workers and how their workers are smiling when they're picking up the tea leaves. Very fancy, happy picture. No corporation would say that they're being unethical. How would we understand that they're being unethical is if you look at the numbers. How are they staying in business for so long? The reason is that because they're paying their workers so low. The reason why corporations are earning billions of dollars is because they're paying their workers a minimum wage or even below minimum wage. So that's something that's been happening in all of the corporations, in all of the tea gardens that are employing their workers. I don't think any of the corporations pay their worker more than 170 taka. And if I were to answer your second question, that the workers had an initial demand of 300, and why aren't they demanding more? Well, the answer to that is there are various unions in the tea workers, and there are disagreements among the unions. So in 2022, there was actually a demand for their wage to be 500 taka instead of 300 taka. But the union that proposed 500 taka did not actually come to the limelight. The union that proposed 300 taka, for obvious reasons, came to the limelight. And then by then Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, it was intervened to be 170 taka. And because of the hierarchical relationship that exists, because of the colonial rules between a manager and the workers, where the managers are actually treated as gods and the workers are treated as if they're not even human beings, they actually had to accept what they were given. So I hope I answered your question. And to come to the second question, Apu, I think you're absolutely right. I could not pinpoint a specific recommendation. The reason why I had to give 10 recommendations or a lot of policy improvements is because there are actually 10,000s or millions of problems, and it's hard to pinpoint. Would we actually talk about child labor? Would we talk about women? Or would we talk about the exploitation that's been happening? There's so much happening at the same time, it's hard to pinpoint. But if I were to say that requirement, say what requires the most attention, I would say transparency of the supply chain. That is what we need to focus on first. We need to ensure that the supply chain in the tea industry and in the cocoa industry, they are being transparent and they are not reaping the maximum benefit from the production, because let's be honest, it's the workers who are doing most of the work. So I hope I answered the question on that. And to answer the third question, I think your question was, how can we say that the workers are being exploited if there aren't any productivity? Well, if you look at both of the industries, if I were to talk about one of the leading tea industries, it has been in business for over 202 years now. And in Ivory Coast and also in Bangladesh, there's a huge unemployment problem. If the workers are fired, it wouldn't be a problem for the corporation to find another worker in within 2 days. So if the workers aren't being productive, if the workers aren't doing their job, and if the workers aren't doing more than they should do, I don't think any of the corporations would be in business. because it is ultimately the workers who are producing the tea, who are producing the cocoa. And without the tea and the cocoa in the first place, there would be no corporations taking over the money.
Right. Okay. Now we have a question. Some people like to write.
Okay, thank you for your question. Actually, the data of healthy life expectancy was taken from Global Burden Disease database, and they claim that they have incorporated disease, disabilities, mental issues, and everything that relates to health. So actually, as far as I can remember, they claims that. So yeah, they have included mental health too, as you asked. Thank you.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, so as a researcher and whatever little things that we have, maybe you may not incorporate it, but whatever I observe, I would like to highlight. You may ignore that, that is absolutely fine. But in your cases that I'm seeing the economic inequality that you have mentioned, but that aspect what I see is missing in that cases. So something like Guinea coefficient or something, if you can measure, that would make very more sense. Or maybe even I would suggest because as you mentioned, children are working, they are not going for education, etc. Even multidimensional poverty, you can look comparison, that would be better. That is my little knowledge that I would like to highlight. And in your case, Sadia, that I just wanted to know for a curiosity that what do you mean by short run and long run when it is in macroeconomics? And your data is still 2019, right? So after COVID, even if you can compare something, it may be better for your paper. Just I want that clarification and other things they have already highlighted. And for Pawan, yeah, if we can work on this maybe vulnerability, poverty aspect, we can work together in that. And in as you were mentioning that household size, but I do not know how it is calculated, but better to use OECD, that equivalent skill data they have given. Because when we say household size is large and include the children, that doesn't make sense. And as Madam was also highlighting, it is my observation that if you can compare within the Nepal different regions and the reasons for that, and including even regional dummies, maybe that makes more sense. That was I was thinking. And even I was thinking if you can comment my paper, that would be better. But thank you.
Right. No, I think you can have bilateral discussion during tea break when you don't have time. It's already thank you very much. Thank you once again, all the presenters. There's no discussion and on the floor and those who have asked questions as well. Right. I won't take much time, probably 3, 4, 5 minutes. The first paper, goes from vulnerability to poverty. Very interesting paper. Even in Bangladesh, I mean, right at this moment, the poverty, extreme poverty, and overall poverty is 18.7% overall poverty, extreme poverty 5.6%. But vulnerable non-poor, right at the moment, non-poor but overall poverty is more than double, and he also indicated that there's a huge issue here. It's not only about those who are in poverty, but we need to look into those who are vulnerable to poverty. And in this vulnerable to poverty, you brought in the financial inclusion. That is very important to actually address this. The thing is that it is important we can also think about. It is important to look into the sources of vulnerability. Yes, that I mentioned. Say, for example, in Bangladesh, health shocks, yes, that is natural hazards, and probably financial inclusion will address some of the yes types of vulnerability, not all the types of vulnerability. So if you can address those, that would be interesting to see. So on this, and then right before making specific comments, I have general comments to make in all the papers. Basically, also you have picked up the issues, you have done your analysis, you have actually come up with findings and then the policy implications. But thing is, basically, it is important to relate this to the overall context and also the policies. And more importantly, how it happened. Say, for example, forward how these what are the channels so is this financial inclusion work through to address the vulnerability of the poor. So basically how it works is also important. In that case, in addition to quantitative analysis, you can brought in some qualitative stuff like eh, uh, that won't actually give us a good estimate, but will help us to understand reasons behind what we see. So this is the general, and your paper is very well done, and you can look into that. Second paper is modern day slavery. Your title says modern day slavery, and then you discuss the exploitation. The exploitation is fine, but if you say really slavery, the some narrative of the slavery kind of situation in the tea garden or cocoa gardens, what kind of slavery we see today compared to the slavery by the term slavery we understand. So what kind of slavery is there in this business, in this initiatives? So you can, since you're an anthropologist studying anthropology, so you will be able to actually look into this very nicely. Forget about economic evil is fine, but basically if you can actually highlight the kind of slavery that is still there in this industry, that will give you a very good understanding of the situation itself. In the ego here, basically you indicated about the very low salary, no doubt about that. But as you also said, finally, that I mean the enterprises they will say that they're doing these, that, and so that is partly true because according to salary, they are providing the ration, they are providing health services, so on and so forth. So you have to bring all this stuff in, and are they locked up in that kind of probably yes, probably not quite, but I mean, you will be able to tell us about them. If a key worker or those who are living there would like to get out of that tea garden, would like to get involved in other kind of activities, would like to get involved in studying and moving up in the ladder, can they do that? Can they do that, or they are locked up within that territory or within this? So those kind of analysis that will help in understanding the EAS. Is it still kind of slavery in modern day or exploitation of previous times? Like, as we say that, I mean, tea garden owners, lavish life, and workers. This is true for everybody, garments workers and garments owners. So in most cases, this is the kind of
The government workers have got a bargaining power, but I don't think the workers have got that power.
They
That's
don't
why
have,
probably I thought
do
it's
they really have bargaining power? If they start and then they will
better
get
than
fired.
the tea workers.
Okay, but his slavery kind of right. Third paper is on impact of financial sector development. Very good stuff on health outcome and then healthy life expectancy. I think financial sector development is a huge issue. The financial sector development itself, it is a lot of things, almost everything. Banks and so on and so forth. And then you're trying to get that to the health outcome. And there is some interesting results, but at the same time, some contradictory results as well. You see, financial sector impact on health. Growth doesn't have any positive impact on health outcome. But what is the financial sector's impact on growth? Both we cannot have growth without the financial sector development. If financial sector has impact on healthy lifestyle, then why not grow and etc. And how once again my general comment is that how which channel these things actually happen. So better you can look into those stuff. Finally, remittance. This is more or less obvious. But I'd like to request you to begin to, you indicated about probably international remittance. Is it the remittance that you have?
Yeah.
The aid international. But I think in Nepal as well, like in Bangladesh, there are domestic remittance from foreign as well.
Yes.
So international. And what proportion of the household average household income comes from international market? So the extent and how it actually contributes here. It's more or less obvious. It helps in, we have seen in Bangladesh, in many other countries as well, that remittances actually is important for the overall economy and for households as well to help them have their growth in income, consumption, education, health, and so on. So good stuff, but if you can also look into the domestic remittance as well and make a comparison between international remittance and how actually in Nepal these remittance actually work and help households to come up poverty. And you can also bring in the voluntary stuff if possible in that as well. Right. With this, I'd like to stop and I would like to thank all the paper presenters, discussants, and you all who have been here for more than an hour and a half with great passion and attention. Thank you so much. I think he is probably working outside. So thank you very much. And over to you. কিছু পুরস্কার টুরস্কার ব্যাপার আছে সার্টিফিকেট ওকে ঠিক আছে I know
Sir, I would like this is our respected chair to hand out the certificates to our presenters.
Okay. For speaker, কোথায় আসলে ভালো হয়
স্যার এই সামনে চলে আসে
আমি সামনে যাবো আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে ওকে ঠিক আছে আসছি আসেন আপনি আসেন
You can also go for investing. Yeah, I think so. That is like really personally.
So, as we conclude this session, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our chair, Dr. Exam Zulfikar Ali, for guiding through these discussions, and to our discussant, Dr. Ajit Kori, for her valuable insights. A special thanks to all our presenters for sharing their thought-provoking research, and to our audience for their engaging participation. With that, we wrap up our session 3. Please enjoy the rest of the session. We have tea and snacks arranged for you on the second floor. After that, we have the panel discussion, building democratic political order in post-insurrection Bangladesh, putting citizens in the driver's seat. Thank you all.